wondering if we could talk about one of those topics that always makes me laugh when both of you have a tendency to say this, and it's one of those things that I know in the culture you both have worked in is a term you guys use, and I think it might be foreign to other people. It was to me until I heard it, and then you guys explained it a little bit. But the idea of celebrating failures always makes me laugh when you say it out loud, because it's like, it's one of those oxymorons. You're like, what? That doesn't even make sense. But I would love to hear where that comes from and how you explain that to people, especially other leaders. Because I know as a leader, I was like, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. No offense. Go ahead.
Well, I think there's more to that when you say celebrate failures. I think the culture you're trying to create is an empowered culture, and if you're trying to empower people, you have to give them the ability to fail. Now, fail at a means of not failing to the point where you're gonna not have product for the day of all that stuff, but celebrating failures in an organization means you're giving people the ability to move forward and have empowerment, right? And as you empower people, I'm gonna fail. So if I can come to you, if you're my leader, Heather, and I can come to you like, hey, so guess what? I've tried something in the boundaries we've talked about. It didn't work.
But my question is, I get that, but it's such a foreign concept. So like, a great example is if you had kids and you're raising them and they go out and let's say they're playing baseball and they strike out. Do you congratulate them for striking out? Like, for leaders, it's not like a normal concept, right?
I think if they didn't strike out, they wouldn't know why they struck out, right? Maybe they held it down too low, maybe too high, what have you, too fast. I know baseball.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
But I think when you fail a bit here and there, you start to learn the bounds of where you need to stay and what you're learning. So you kind of start to learn, right, the edges of, oh, okay, if I go too far here, that's not going to work, or here. But I also think for someone like me too, that is the best way to learn, because when I make a mistake, I'm definitely not making it again, and I know why. And I think I for those of us that are pretty analytical, we're like, well, why didn't that work, or how can I do that? You know, it's not always, and sometimes it's more, it is experimental. You're working on something and seeing if something's going to work, and it's because you don't know the answer. It's not always like a yes or no, right or wrong. It's a, I could do this many ways, and how will I go about it? So
how do you build the trust with your team so that they know they can come to you when they fail? Because that's not innately, like, I'm one of those people growing up, like, in a work environment. When I failed, I felt terrible, and I would do everything to fix it, but I sure the heck wasn't going to go to my boss and say, look, I made a failure, haha. So, like, how do you build that?
But you think it's again, the culture. I mean, it's creating a culture of, you know, you can call it continuous improvement, whatever you want to call it, right? But creating that culture of, we're going to empower people to make decisions on behalf of the customer on a daily basis to move forward. And inside that, we want you to drive the business. And by driving the business, that doesn't mean you're going to have all the answers, right? So there's the thing, as a leader, if I know the team doesn't have all the answers, we're going to set boundaries and be like, so Whitney, make sure that you stay within the boundaries. Make your decisions. But now when she comes to me and she's like, hey, John, we tried something. It didn't work today. My response isn't, what'd you do? It's, what'd you learn? Here's what we learned. And right away is, now we're going to take that to the point of, so what are you going to do next? So my first thing is, I'm going to encourage her to do that again, because that's where success comes from. I'll talk about something personal, because I was where you were, Heather, 20 years ago. I'm like, what's success? Like, as I was starting my career and I was still a supervisor, I'm like, if I fail, how do I get better? And there was a time and point where I read a book, and it was about, you learn from your mistakes. Oh, wait a minute. I kind of started putting two and two together is, oh, so success really is, the more mistakes I make and the more learning, the better I get. So that was part of my learning, is as long as you're not overstepping, right? You can't go to the point and lose the business and be like, well, I tried something today and guess what? We no longer have any customers. That's not what we mean when we say accelerate failures. Set the boundaries and then go talk to your leader. And as a leader, now you know your team's engaged because they're trying new things.
Yeah, and I would add to that just also some humor and humility. There's definitely been many times with my team where I think they were a little bit, right, apprehensive to tell me or what to do, but I would definitely just come at it with just humor. Like, we would just laugh about it. Like, tell me again, are you serious? That really happened? Oh my gosh, like, how did that? And it's more funny, and I think it allows them to open up a little bit more and say, yeah, and because I did it this way, that happened as well. And it's more like, oh, what a silly situation, but this is cool. This is interesting. Okay, what would we do next? So, I mean.
So then when you do that, do you announce it like to the team, or is it more in a one-on-one kind of?
It's more, at least situations I've been in, those are more like one-on-one coachings where it's like, oh wow, okay, that's
okay. So it's not like this big old celebration. It's more like an individual or a smaller team that's doing it, kind of thing.
For me, it's more smaller team. I feel like you've done a little bit more of like, hey, look at this crazy thing we learned. Like, so it's more of a
so
it's either or.
I've done that before with, I usually leave the leader know. I'm like, hey, are you okay?
Okay, so get the buy-in first.
Always double check, right? I mean, it's always right putting people first. But I'll be like, hey, so and so, you okay with sharing this? And then we share it, and I get excited. I'm like, hey, guess what we learned? Because here's what they did, and it's promoting that again, creating a culture where people are driving the business forward, and we can't drive the business forward unless we're able to make mistakes. And if you can't make mistakes, then someone's just telling you what to do, and now we're micromanagers, and we're all sitting here. It goes back to the topic we talked about in one of the previous topics. We probably don't want to go to work on Monday because Sunday night we're like, man, now someone's just going to tell me what to do, and here I am. If we create the environment where people are driving forward, and then I think as a leader, I get excited about this topic because as soon as someone comes in and says, hey, we tried something and it didn't work, I already got 5 questions of just like, so what are you doing next? How did the team feel? How much? What do you think got you there? Because at the end of that, I just want them to keep doing it, and it's exciting. I get excited just talking.
Yeah, and you have that one moment right there, like you're talking about, and how you react, right? Because if you respond the other way, you have lost trust, and they're not going to tell you next time they make a mistake, or probably even tell you next time they need help. Because they're, I guess they think I'm incompetent or I can't solve a problem, so
that makes sense.
Worse.